Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and everyone in between. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Nice to see you, folks. Today's episode, we're going to be continuing our series talking about the moon in Sagittarius. This is, of course, my very own moon. This is my natal moon sign. Although my Venus is in a similarly earthy sign, but not as good as your Venus. My Venus is in Virgo. But this is still my natal moon energy, and I've been excited to do this series. Today in particular, we're going to be talking about Sagittarius moon with Taurus in the sign, with Venus in the sign of Taurus. This is likely kind of one of the best things that a Sagittarius moon could have. It's really one of the better placements of Venus available to Sagittarius moon. It might actually, at some levels, this might actually be the best. So yeah, I mean, really, it's kind of sort of that. The Venus also does well in Capricorn and Aquarius for Sagittarius moon, but I digress. Usually, usually I talk about in these videos about when Venus is angled to the moon, it's a bad thing because the moon starves Venus, according to Vedic astrology. But as we can see from this here graph, when we look, this is the Vedic idea of the aspects of the Sun, Moon, Mercury, and Venus. So 90 degrees is when Venus is the 4th house away from the moon. 120 is when it's the 5th house away from the moon. 150 means the 6th house, and then 180 is the 7th house. So if you could still be in an angle to the moon, let's say if the moon is at 29 degrees of Sagittarius and Venus is at, is that right? No, if the moon is at 0 degrees Sagittarius and Venus is at like 29 degrees of Taurus, then you're really leaning towards the fullest aspect possible, at which case there would be a huge starvation happening here. But generally, it's likely that you might not necessarily be in the place of starvation because the moon, Venus is around 150 degrees angle from the moon here. So typically this isn't necessarily going to have that moon starvation, and I'm going to kind of speak to it from that sort of way. Just keep in mind that Sagittarius moon is already somebody who thinks too independently, too much for its own career, its ambitions, and the things that it enjoys doing by itself, which is not conducive to the sentimental sharing of emotional fulfillment that the moon is supposed to convey. Now, I recommend that you check out my Sagittarius moon video. I did it. It's an hour long, and I really recommend it if you want to get into the dynamics that cause Sag moon to be difficult, and just about Sag moon energy in general. It's an hour long, and you'll likely enjoy it. So, for this particular person, we can see that there is an energy of a 6th house energy, and remember, this is the 6th house from the moon. It's not the same as being the 6th house from the rising sign. This is really just showing that the Venus is here. Venus resonates more with the 6th house than people realize. They say in Vedic astrology that Venus abides by the numerology of 6. It's interesting that Venus is exalted in the 12th sign, Pisces, and debilitated in the 6th sign, Virgo. Venus is kind of like the axle of bliss in a certain way. So this Venus is going to be constantly met with what could be an agitating necessity to ground yourself, enjoy the sentimental, earthy, sensual pleasures of Venus, which at some ways is going to ultimately not be what your moon in Sagittarius wants to do by its own devices, which is to progress in its career and its ambitions, its self-expansion, its career opportunities, its networking, etc. This is a Venus that is going to be sometimes sacrificing your own desires for the relationship and getting something out of that relationship. Especially, it'll ultimately be something that's good for you, that you need, because you probably, again, we're going to talk about how the moon in Sagittarius lacks water chakra, the Svadhisthana chakra. Now, if you've got a good Jupiter, then you should just ultimately give your relationship whatever it needs, because your good Jupiter will help you to stay on the path of Dharma and of truth, and to convey to your partner the importance of sticking to your Dharma, sticking to your path of the sun, and your partner will understand it, especially if you have a good Jupiter. If you don't have a good Jupiter, then you will feel like you're wasting time by sacrificing important, necessary effort spent on bonding yourself to the energy grid of love and support that is all around you. Not just with your personal relationship, but also with your loved ones, with your family, with your best friends. We all have to cater to this as sort of a half and half thing, sun and moon in balance, because we can't abide by the path of the king, the sun, indefinitely without water, drinking water along our path up the mountain. If you're going to dry yourself out by not sustaining yourself with the water chakra, then ultimately you're going to kind of start to get depressed. You know, Sagittarius moon gets depressed. We wouldn't think it because it seems so optimistic, but I'm a Sagittarius moon, and I often like to say that our shadows reach just as far as our sun rays. We seem very high, we're having such a good time all the time, but when people see us, people don't see us in our dark moments because they're just as dark, just as frustrating. And the main reason is that the one thing, the things that we tend to love that give us this optimism, we've held on ourselves. We've deeply attached ourselves to them because simply we want to be able to get a good, juicy experience in order to move forward with our career and advance in our career. So the moon is in the sign of Jupiter, which is a masculine planet. It's lending towards Sun and Mars, the masculine doing, because the sun is what we do with our lives from 9 to 5, whereas the moon is what we are and who we're with and who we are supported and nurtured by. So the moon is not mutually nurturing those who nurture it in this combination. Kind of steals from whatever people are giving us love and nurturing in order to launch it towards our career. So the moon also really in particular is bad because it's in the sign of Jupiter, which is a masculine sign, masculine planet, which isn't necessarily so bad in Pisces, because Pisces is closer to exaltation in Taurus, where the moon is exalted. And Pisces is a receptive sign. It's a feminine sign, a feminine dimension of a masculine planet, Jupiter. Sagittarius is the masculine side of a masculine planet, and it's right next door to its debilitation in Scorpio. I don't know if I already said this, but check out my Sagittarius moon video if you want to learn more about how to get through this kind of difficulty and what it is and what it means. So, with this being said, this is a person who needs a little bit of compensation from Venus at the level of the Svadhisthana chakra. In this particular model of Vedic cosmology, there are many ways for conveying the nature of the chakras. I often say that they're like a community center. And the first chakra, in some ways, it's ruled by Saturn. In some ways, it's ruled by, really just different things. In this idea of Vedic cosmology, given by Ernst Wilhelm through the Panchatattvas, the 5 essences, what we recognize is that the first chakra, the earth chakra, is lorded by Mercury. It's the playful balance between procreative survival and inspired human divine intelligence. Mercury is the play between those two poles, and it's how we manifest and manage our earthly needs and responsibilities. The second chakra is the Svadhisthana chakra, the water chakra, and it's lorded by Venus and the moon. And therefore, it takes Venus and the moon to really get the best Svadhisthana chakra activity that you can. But if your moon is weak, at least you have Venus to compensate for it. And this is where I'm at, because Sagittarius moon, at least by sign, is technically not a good place for developing thinking about enjoying the sentimental bond of sharing experiences, sharing invigorating, deep bonding, loving experiences with those around you and with your loved ones. Because you're too busy thinking about how to make yourself enjoy what you do when you're working and when you're doing your work, because you kind of want it to be your own beloved activity. This is what I was saying, is that Sag moons get depressed when their one thing that they do to regenerate themselves becomes the only thing they do in their life, because then there's no variety. I'm a musician, and if I love music, it regenerates me, but also I use it in my ambitions in my career. And if I don't have a lover, if I don't have people and support around me where I can just give to them and compassionately enjoy time with them, they will compassionately give time and joy to me as well, ideally, if I give it to them. If I don't have that, then all I have to lean on to regenerate myself emotionally are my beloved projects and tasks. And because of the nature of the moon, it adapts, it changes, right? It goes through monthly things. So a Sag moon that doesn't have connections to people it's like got this sort of like uncontrollable pendulum of inspiration and depression, essentially. Because the only thing that you have to regenerate yourself is this one beloved thing that you do. And if music, in my case, is the only thing I have to regenerate myself, then I almost don't want to do it because it's the sacred thing, but I have to do it, and it becomes like, the one thing I have to give me joy has become this job, this routine task that I have to do, and there's no elastic snap. The sun is okay. Well, the sun's exalted in Aries, right? It's okay being single-pointed and consistently one thing. It's actually a good thing when that's the case with the sun. But with the moon, we have to ideally abide with a shared balance of others. That's why the moon's exalted in Taurus. So, in this case, the Sagittarius moon is a little bit too independent and, shall we say, isolating. But you are lucky because of Venus being in Taurus. Now, what I was kind of getting at here is that Venus needs to compensate for the moon lacking inherent desire of the Svadhisthana chakra. The moon doesn't instinctively think about grounding itself with the energy grid of love and support around it. It kind of thinks more of like, what can I do with the energy that I've cultivated with these people who I love, right? So when they're at a party, they're often, and they're doing like lots of fun performance things, kind of just being fun for everybody, which we enjoy doing, but it doesn't necessarily regenerate us, and it doesn't necessarily cater to the other people. It caters to us. People enjoy us, but we put it out there for ourselves, and their enjoyment is an enjoyment for a narcissistic purpose. This is Sagittarius moon at its grossest negative connotation, shall we say. I'm a Leo rising, and I often like to hit these combinations with their worst so that you can see and be objective about when you are being your worst. But at the same time, this is part of who we are. You know, I do all these videos because I love to do it, and I got to tell my partner, honey, I'm not hanging out tonight. I'm going and doing YouTube videos. I find ways of connecting with my lover and making sure that the connection and the sentimental bond is still there so I can be regenerated. So when I do this YouTube thing, I can be all happy and actually excitable and have the energy that attracts abundance and the expansion that my Sagittarius moon seeks. Your Venus in Taurus has a way of being able to do this. And essentially, it's through its own enjoyment of the rapture and the pleasure of sentimental and sensual erotic connections with others. You actually enjoy that. When Venus is in an earthy sign like Taurus especially, but it's in its own sign, really, Venus does well in all the air and earth signs. It's because it can see its own nature and it feels and remembers the ease that happens when another person is receptive to us. So Venus in Taurus, most Sagittarius moons, again, think so much about its career that they don't inherently see the value of thinking about other people and thinking about how they can share blissful sentimental experiences with them. You have Venus in Taurus, and by sign, this constant need to share energy with others can actually be a great consistent axle for regeneration, where you probably do big things in your job and your career, and then you come home quickly. You consistently have a desire to regenerate whatever energy you put painstakingly into your ambitions in your career. And you come home and you say, "Woo, that was a good one today, baby. Now what are we gonna do today? Are we gonna watch a movie? I got time for you. I'll make time for you." And Venus in Taurus enjoys inherently and instinctively making time for others, because Venus, the other water Svadhisthana chakra upholder, which is compensating here for the moon. And unless that moon is in an angle of opposition to Venus, this Venus ultimately is okay on its own and thinks about the enjoyment that it's going to have with its partners. And it's like the goodness, when it comes to Venus, I often consider it as like the goodness of drinking water. We don't necessarily do it because we think, oh, it's healthy to drink water. We do it because when we get thirsty, we know the goodness that drinking water provides us. It's an experience. It is a knowledge, a self-knowledge based on experience. It's the true wisdom of Venus. There's a deep metaphor for yoga and meditation there. We don't meditate because we think it's going to be good, because that's a desire for a result. We meditate because we have had the past experience of the goodness that it provides, so we don't think that it's a good thing. We don't think it's sattvic when we do it. We just do it in faithful surrender to divine Ishvara, and lo and behold, we don't think about needing water, needing spiritual respite in the case of meditation. We do it and it happens, and voila. Kind of a cool yogic mystical consciousness there. But ultimately, when it comes to loving others and sharing time with others, you instinctively understand that you will get energy and inspiration to do greater things and expand more because of the magical power of your Venus instinctively knowing the important goodness of drinking the water, and drinking the water by meaning setting up enjoyable things to do with your friends. You're probably someone who works as hard as you play, and that's a good thing for Sagittarius moon. It's just as constant. This is the Venus being in the 6th house from the moon. There's a more consistent, mutable, constant need to regenerate yourself through the earthy, sensual pleasures and enjoyments of Venus. And this is a real lifesaver for any Sagittarius moon, because you remember and know how to reciprocate the goodness that another partner gives. Because you have a will. You want space to go and do your ambitious things, yes? Just like I do as Sagittarius moon? Right. So, in order to do that, we all need to have support by the universe and the loved ones around us. And if that comes from a sentimental partner, or partners if you're polyamorous, or loved ones if you're asexual, the more that we reciprocate our people, the more that they will reciprocate us. And this is the only way to make space for the ambitions that you deeply hold inside of yourself. Venus in Taurus has a Venus that will has a genetic memory, samskaras, that remember how good it felt when somebody was receptive to us. Sag moon can be nitpicky. So let's say somebody is doing something, they're just, they're popping their teeth, or they're like picking their teeth with a toothpick, something like that, whatever it is. And you say to your partner, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but it does bother me when you do that, you know. And I'm sorry that it bothers me in that way, but it can be just a little bit frustrating to me. And if the partner goes, okay, I won't do it around you, yeah, no problem, and you go, thank you, and then if they do stop, you feel the goodness of them having reciprocated that. All Sagittarius moons feel this, but the Venus in Taurus remembers the gesture, and it has a memory of how good it felt to be listened to. So then your partner will say something about you that frustrates them, or they'll ask you to do something. You know, honey, we haven't hung out for a long time. I was really hoping that we could hang out on Friday. And you say, you know, you remember the goodness that being receptive gave to you, so you'll equally share it with them. As a gesture of, you know, it's like Venus is the vehicle. Venus in Taurus puts good fuel into the car because it knows that it will go farther. I mean, the economy is screwed up right now, and it doesn't mean that you have to actually put good vehicle in your physical car. But Venus is a metaphor for vehicles, for things that convey us to our desired goals and wants. The water. So you'll put good fuel into your partners. You'll actually give quality time to them because you want that quality time as well. Really what it is that Venus in Taurus enjoys quality time. If you're a Sag moon and you really want to drink that water to get you farther in your life, you are going to deeply enjoy it and be enriched by it, so that you have to spend less time trying to make yourself happy by yourself, by your own devices, whenever you go to work and put in a lot of effort and come home and you want to enjoy your time. You know, like the sensual rapture of just the senses for its own sake can sustain you only so far. Jupiter can be very inclined to just like watch movies or watch its phone or eat food or go out and have a drink at the bar and talk to random strangers, and that feels like enough, but it will get boring. And eventually it's like putting mud or, you know, putting like diesel, dirty fuel into your vehicle. You know that A, it's going to kind of make you depressed and rough up your vehicle a bit, but B, you're going to need to fill it up with gas again because it wasn't actually quality gas in those little hits of sensual relief. A partner who you actually are bonded with in the soul, this is the magic of the water. Svadhisthana chakra is that 1 + 1 = 3. The bondedness of your soul with their soul has an ergonomic design to just put, so you just have to put in less effort to get more gain, more enjoyment, more of the respite. You know, Sag moons don't realize, especially when they don't have a lover, if they haven't grounded themselves in the earthly energies of those around them, they'll just spin off and do their career things and work super hard, and they'll burn themselves out and they'll lose their inspiration. But since they've never had the experience of being with a lover who grounds them, they don't know. A lot of Sagittarius moons and Scorpio moons and Libra moons suffer for this. Libra moon more gets into the wrong relationships and they suffer for this in a different way, but all moons close to the proximity of Scorpio can just not realize how good it can be to be reciprocated with a lover that you actually functionally find matches with your soul, functionally works psychologically with you, and is not just someone who you're using to get a little bit of support. When you actually care about that lover, you're going to get a good quality hit of good gasoline so that you can sustainably do the things you want to do in your life. And this is what this Venus in Taurus kind of gifts you with. But I will say, just because your Venus is in Taurus doesn't mean there's many things that can still squash a Venus. If it's Venus's main enemy is the moon. And if this Venus is in that angle to the moon, you still got to be careful. If it's in an opposite angle, you still have to be careful that this Venus doesn't enjoy its own sensual rapture and feels, you know, I don't need to go and see people. I can just go to the massage parlor and spend $60 of my hard-earned money with some random stranger to give me that sensual experience, and then I don't need a partner. You know, that can kind of happen with Venus being opposite to the moon. Venus can be conjunct Saturn, and that makes Venus difficult. It can be ill in Shadbala. There's still many things that can make this Venus difficult, just like there are many things that can make the moon either difficult or good. Just because it's in Sagittarius doesn't mean that you're going to have this narcissistic quality. It's at extreme. Just remember, like I said, when you come to my videos, it's Leo rising. I'm going to give you all the pitfalls that you could fall into so you can see beyond them and try to correct them. In any case, generally, at least by sign, this Venus does a lot to compensate for Sagittarius moon's rather lacking of the Svadhisthana chakra. That being said, I always like to give my own spiel on these combinations. Let's bring it down to earth a little bit. We're going to talk about erotic astrology by Phyllis Vega. Give us a little bit of a picture, an idea of what it's like, the love-making nature, the romantic nature of a person with Moon in Sagittarius and Venus in Taurus. Moon in Sag, Venus in Taurus. You long to settle down and bask in the emotional security of a close relationship, Venus in Taurus. But as soon as this happens, you may find yourself feeling restless. Responsibilities, the need to take care of the vehicle, Sagittarius Moon. Especially Venus being in that 6th house position, feels like maintenance. But it's still a vehicle that'll convey you farther than you would be without it. Making love is the most natural thing in the world to you, and your fiery libido demands lots of sexual activity. Sag Moon is actually super erotically inclined. It almost wants to get sex out of the way in order to feel relieved, in order they can feel good about going and do the career things in a peaceful way that they want to do. Venus in Taurus adds a little bit of, I really want to get something deep out of this experience, which can make for a Kama Sutra energy of Sagittarius Moon, and variety and novelty, which can be ultimately superficial at its deepest essence, in my opinion. But Venus in Taurus can bring a bit of a tantric attitude to sexuality, especially when Sag Moon is philosophically understanding of that tantra. It becomes a yoga, and that's really not a bad place to be if you're willing to compensate for your Sag Moon's scattered, mutable energy. It can be a very good thing. Your ideal mate not only understands the urgency of your erotic desires, but ideally, they also share them. They're ideally someone who's also horny, who loves to enjoy the rapture of the physical senses and of pleasure in the same way that you do. And, you know, ultimately what you've got to work out is that it has to be in a mutual regard, so that the both of you have a planned, worked out way of doing this. Typically, if your Venus is good, it's just going to happen naturally. Your partner and you are going to read each other, and you're going to understand it, and it's going to work out. If it doesn't, the key to all things, especially with Sagittarius Moon, is to meditate, be aware of the nature of your very compulsive mind, which has always been so internalized, and try to remove yourself from attachment to your past mental habits and tendencies by practicing at least once a day, ideally, taking time to promote an emptiness of mind so that you can see beyond the limits of your rather sometimes dense reception energy, and to communicate with your lover. That's something I always recommend, especially for Sagittarius Moon. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope this was informative for you. My name is Dustin Cormier, and this is How to Rock Astrology. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll see you guys on the other side. Thanks for watching.